If you'd like to communicate with us, you can do that using Twitter. It's at InsightADV. That's at InsightADV. Let's talk about QR codes for just a moment. B.L. Orkman for Advertising Age wrote just last week that QR codes are dead, being replaced with brand new technology that beats the pants out of the old technology of QR. Well, not so fast, BL. I think there's a couple of things that we need to talk about and consider before you decide to buy flowers for the funeral of QR codes. Now, true, QR codes have been around for a very long time. They were first introduced in Japan 20-some years ago and finally made their way over here to the United States, where business and industry has been slow to pick up on them, but consumers even slower. However, that whole mantra is changing, and we're seeing consumers now start to recognize exactly what a QR code is. BL says that there's better technologies that you don't have to download, that turns your smartphone into a super warrior in the grocery store. The problem is she's not quite accurate. You do have to download each one of the 3 apps that she talked about in order to make your phone work when you bounce it off of a product and or service sign. So let's take a look at a video that I did a number of years ago in the infancy of many of our clients learning about QR codes, and you'll get an idea about how we suggest you use QR codes. And then I've got 4 tips for you on how to make QR codes work for your business no matter what you're selling. Ryan, go ahead and run that.
So the other day at a networking function, I was standing talking of all things QR codes with a couple of people that utilize them. In the first example, this woman who works for a specialty company was passing her card around, and on the back of it had a huge QR code. I asked her, I said, well, where does it point to? And she said, I don't have the foggiest idea. I'm not even sure what it is. In the second example, I was talking to a real estate person, and this guy was telling me about how he uses QR codes on those little sheets that they put in the, in the sign or next to the sign on a house that's for sale. Go ahead and take a sheet, so to speak. Well, they've got QR codes on each one of those sheets, and I said to him, well, that's really a great idea, but what happens if there's no sheets left? Why don't you just put the QR code on the sign? That way it's always there. QR codes are an amazing device if they're used and used properly. But a couple of things that these stories point out. Number one, you've got to make sure that your entire staff knows what the heck the QR code is and where it points to. And secondly, smarter utilization of the QR code is a place where people can see it, and if they're given a direction, consumers might be able to figure it out. We use QR codes all the time on some point-of-purchase displays for our clients. Here's a quick example of how we use QR codes for products and services that belong to our clients. Now, this is a point-of-purchase display. This is what goes on the shelf next to the product. Of course, we've got an image of the product here, 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet points about what the product is and what it does. Here's the QR code. Next to the QR code, we've got an explanation of what will happen when the individuals utilize the technology to see a video. We think it's a pretty good way to use it. A QR code lesson. Make sure your people know about it, use it the right way, and allow consumers a little bit of input to what exactly is a QR code and how they can use it to get more information about your product or service. For Insight Advertising, I'm Michael Libby. Thanks for stopping by.
So there you go, a quick rundown, 2 minutes and some odd seconds about QR codes and the utilization of that. We did that a couple of years ago, by the way. All right, let's run down what those tips are. Number one, make sure that anybody who works for your company, your business, or your service knows exactly what the QR code is, how to access it, so that they can explain it to consumers. If the rest of the people on staff don't know what a QR code, or they don't understand the power of it, it's going to be pretty hard for them to explain it to people who have no idea and say, hey, what are all them squiggly lines for anyway? Also, make sure that you don't get too fancy. And what we're talking about here, if color works for you, go ahead and use color, but we prefer black and white because it's easily recognizable. If you start using color and it hides within whatever it is that you're putting it on, maybe people won't be able to understand exactly what it is. Have a description of what a QR code is and how to activate it next to your little QR code itself. That way, consumers aren't confused and say, oh, that must just be a barcode for the purchase of the price. No, And give people examples. You know, do a couple of blogs about QR codes if you're in business and you're utilizing QR codes. Talk to them about where they can go to download the QR code reader. And a word about apps for just a minute. Applications are a great tool if you've got lots of money and you're a well-known brand. If you don't have lots of money and you're not a well-known brand, there's some danger to this. Let me explain why. First of all, it's going to cost you money to create the app. That's not so difficult. However, it does cost money to do that. Then what do you have to do? You have to market the app. Just like your product or service, you've got to put some cost to the idea of telling people out there that you do have an application that people can download, and then you have to encourage people to go and download whatever that app is. Now, you're not Southwest Airlines, perhaps, and you're not Ford Motor Company, and you're not some big company out there that already has millions of followers. So you want to stop and think a little bit whether or not you want to invest the time, money, and effort into marketing an application over the easy-to-use QR code that, by the way, is free in most instances. All right, let's move on. A little QR code advice for you. If you need to visit with us or you have a comment or a question, feel free to do that. You can do that on Twitter. We are connected, and that's at InsightADV, at InsightADV. We're going to talk about marriage equality in business. Now, I do not do politics here. It's one of the things that I just don't do because I don't think it's appropriate for this style. But there's lots of businesses that are now turning toward marriage equality in a very strong way. And there's two sides of that argument. We understand that. But whatever business or service that you're in, you might want to just sit back, think a little bit about where your company might be in relationship to marriage equality. Not that you need to make a big deal out of it, not that you need to make a statement about it. Those are political things that might be best left alone. But you better start thinking about what are the ramifications of choosing sides regarding marriage equality. Now, why do I mention that? Well, last week at a shareholders meeting, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz had some interesting things to say, and we apologize for the quality of this video because it was done with a cell phone, but you can hear very clearly what Mr. Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, had to say when he was questioned by a shareholder about the stance that Starbucks had with regard to supporting marriage equality. This all happened at a shareholders meeting, and by the way, the question that the person asked was, wouldn't time be better spent magnifying the brand than taking a political position on marriage equality? After all, you had a dismal showing with regard to the return on investment for shareholders, which, by the way, was 38%. Here's Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, and his answer to that very fiery question. Right?
Because not every decision is an economic decision. Despite the fact that you recite statistics that are narrow in time, we did provide a 38% shareholder return over the last year. I don't know how many things you invest in, but I would suspect not many things, companies, products, investments have returned 38% over the last 12 months. Having said that, it is not an economic decision. The lens in which we are making that decision is through the lens of our people. We employ over 200,000 people in this company, and we want to embrace diversity of all kinds. If you feel, respectfully, that you can get a higher return than the 38% you got last year, it's a free country. You could sell your shares at Starbucks and buy shares in other companies. Thank you very much.
Here to encourage you one way or the other with regard to marriage equality. My job is to at least let you know that people are taking a very firm look at all of these social issues that happen to be out there. If you don't want to alienate one from the other, you might want to just be quiet. But be aware that people are talking about marriage equality. Some big businesses out there have already grappled with the issue, and it's something that's coming to perhaps your flower shop at any day, no matter what size of business you happen to have. When we come back, we're going to be talking about something that people want to sell you over and over and over again. Does it make sense? Do banner ads really pay for themselves if you're an advertiser? If you've been approached by anybody with regard to buying banner ads, you're going to want to pay close attention to what we have to say. We'll give you all kinds of background information about banner ads. Are they worth the price? That story, and then an upcoming conversation with Jeff Delvaux, who's the general manager of the Des Moines Radio Group. Those stories and more right here with Insight on Business, powered by Webcast One Live.